Dear friends, today we discuss about inclusive education in India. I quote from Stephen Hawkins one quotation. He says, people with disabilities are vulnerable because of the many barriers they face. What are the barriers? Attitudinal, physical, and financial. Addressing these barriers is within our reach, and we have a moral duty to do so. But most important, addressing these barriers will unlock the potential of so many people with so much to contribute to the world. Governments everywhere can no longer overlook the hundreds of millions of people with disabilities who are denied access to health, rehabilitation, support, education, and employment, and never get a chance to shine. This is said by Stephen Hawkins. My dear friends, every child has the right to education according to the limits of his or her capacity, whether the capacity be small or great. Now, we call exceptional children because they have special needs. Uh, we can categorize them into six major categories. For example, we call them, first one is mentally retarded children, visually impaired children, hearing impaired children, gifted children, physically handicapped children, and learning disabled children. Every types of these children are in our country. So inclusive education, when we talk about, it implies all young learners, young people with or without disabilities being able to learn together through access to common preschools and even other schools with higher secondary education and so on, with an appropriate network of supportive services. In India, for example, the census 2011, we don't have 2021 census yet, but 2011 census says out of the 121 crore population, about 2.6 crore persons are disabled. That is, if you look at the percentage wise, around 2.21 percentage of total population. It's a huge number. In an era where inclusive development is being emphasized as the right path towards sustainable development, focused initiative for the welfare of disabled persons are essential. This emphasizes the need for strengthening disability statistics in the country. Now we have the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs we call. The SDGs resolve by 2030 to end poverty and hunger everywhere, to combat inequalities within and among the countries, to build peaceful, just, and inclusive societies, to protect human rights and promote gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls, and to ensure the lasting protection of the planet and its natural resources. That these are the goals of the SDG. It also resolved also to create conditions for sustainable, inclusive, and sustained economic growth, shared prosperity, and decent work for all, taking into account different levels of national development and capacities. The SDGs, which aims for leaving no one behind, builds on the Millennium Development Goals and seeks to complete the MDGs did not achieve, particularly in reaching the most vulnerable sections. In the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals, persons with disabilities or disability are specifically mentioned 11 times, and persons in vulnerable situations are specifically mentioned 6 times. So 11 plus 6, so 17 times it is mentioned. Some of the SDGs are addressing issues related to disabled persons. The SDG 4 is aiming at guaranteeing equal and accessible education. SDG 6 is promoting inclusive economic growth, full and productive employment. SDG 10 is for emphasizing the social, economic, and political inclusion of persons with disabilities. SDG 11 is for creating accessible cities and water resources, affordable, accessible, and sustainable transport systems. And SDG 17 is for disability disaggregated data. While data on disabled persons is specifically required for monitoring these SDGs, such data is desired for other SDGs also. So, sustainable development goals, in fact, talking about an inclusive society as a whole. Now, we are focusing on inclusive education. And what is inclusive education in our schools? I have seen in one of the schools in Meghalaya state of India, a place called Thura, where Montfort brothers are running a school, Montfort School, which is a role model school for inclusive education. Almost half of the students, a sizable number in the school, are disabled children. But they are all part of the normal school system. There are blind children, there are deaf and dumb, all sorts of disabled children are there. Physically handicapped children. I have seen them. In fact, I addressed the teachers trainers there. And I saw in the National Education Policy 2020 is also talking about extensively. It is talking about inclusive education. So inclusive education is a high agenda for all of us. So all the disabled children have the equal right to learn and benefit from education and co-curricular activities. We call it co-scholastic activities. It is a school which has to adjust according to the needs and requirements of the child. School is to provide for the training of regular teachers on especially related to the special children's needs. Our schools to provide for vocational training, especially suitable according to their abilities at higher and senior secondary level. Schools are supposed to promote awareness and realization in the community for the education on the disabled children. So there are a huge responsibility on the schools. And how do we practice inclusive education in our schools? Number one is understanding inclusion as a continuing process, not a one-day affair. You admit and leave. No, it is a continuous process. Second, encouraging the participation of all students, teachers, and parents are important because you need to get inclusive education fruitful only when you get support from all. As a team, everybody must work. And we also have the responsibility to make curriculum flexible according to the needs of the disabled while keeping the objective of education the same for all children. I see, yesterday I read the news that Dr. Kasturi Rangan, the person who headed the National Education Policy Commission, is going to head the National Curriculum Framework, and I am sure he will pay attention to this special aspect of inclusive education, and according to their needs, a flexible curriculum must be formed. We need to provide support for the teachers as well as the students in this matter. What are the qualities needed for a teacher? Of course, teachers should have the ability to solve the problems. They should know what the interest, aptitude, and attitude of the students, especially the disabled children, in order to use them and develop them with certain skills. Teachers must have the ability to set high targets for disabled children. We have seen recently the Para Olympics, wonderful performance, and they are capable. Teachers must encourage them, utilize them, and tap the potentials of the children. Teachers have the ability to provide a success experience to the disabled children. Always give an incentive and encouragement. They also should have the knowledge of special instructional material and how to use them, because these disabled children needs special attention, special care, and special way of learning. That also has to be given. And this is possible for a teacher, because I have seen it in that school in Tura. And these teachers need to have one qualification, that is, one quality. For example, they should be highly patient, they should be welcoming, polite, and devoted in their work. Teachers should work as team with parents and special educators. We all need to be together in this endeavor, and keep a record of each child's achievement and failures. You know what we have noticed, usually what the parents feel about this? They have some fear. Their fear, first of all, is that they think that their children with disability may not gain effectively in the inclusive setting. They think that suppose all the children are together, they may be lagging behind. Number one, fear they have. Number two, they also fear that their children will be teased or harmed in the inclusive setting. They may call by name, or they may push the children and make them fall, or harm them. This is what they say, because these children may get easily anger and so on. So others may harm. These are the genuine fear of the parents. But I think if a school practice the inclusive education seriously and follow certain instructional strategies and compensatory support devices, this is highly possible. And I encourage all our schools, especially the Jesuit schools, Catholic schools, Christian schools, and so on, must take this as a serious point. And inclusive education must be our goal. And the post pandemic period, especially this time, all our schools must give special emphasis on inclusive education, so that our education will be for all without any discrimination. And 2.6 percentage of our children, or 2.1%, 2.21 percentage of our children who are disabled, differently abled, may also be counted. I visualize all our schools taking up this seriously and training our teachers, and also giving our teachers this inclusive way of teaching for the betterment of our nation and betterment of our people. Thank you very much, and God bless you all.